How is Twitter cracking down on misinformation in Australia?
And how does Optus's SubHub tackle subscription overload? Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support. Hi there. Welcome back to Vertical Hold Behind the Tech News, the tech show where we sneak across the state borders each week to catch up with Australia's leading technology journalists and dive into the big stories of the week. I'm Adam Turner. We're 10 seconds in and I already forgot it was my line, so we haven't had a great start to the show, but I'm joined by the man, the rock, Alex Kidman, a man who's been fighting fake news since back when it was called lies. Alex, what's the latest nasty rumor that you're fighting online?
See, Adam, I'm a bit tired of fighting new rumours because these days rumours become conspiracies so fast and people get actually hurt. I long for the days when online rumours were really, truly stupid. And so the rumour I'd like to highlight is actually one that Snopes covered about 5 years ago. I love that they covered this. I do see this pop up in my social feeds from time to time, and it's the idea that a bloke getting hit in his, shall we say, man area, just to keep it PG, is more painful than a woman giving birth.
Wow. That'd be a brave man who put that argument out there today. You may as well just cancel yourself and save time.
Look, if you see this online, it's often referenced with, it's this many pain units to get hit in the nards versus this many to give birth. Spoiler alert, it's complete nonsense. Pain is subjective. One is a consistent pain, and I think most people would agree the consistent pain of childbirth over time is going to be worse. But the reality is the way we feel pain as humans is, in fact, totally subjective. And this is where rumours get kind of interesting when you bring actual science into play, because so many people pick up on a rumour and they don't want to think about the science behind it. They don't want to think about the meaning. It just fits their worldview.
I was hoping you'd go for the if I send a Bitcoin to Bill Gates, he'll send me 2 Bitcoins back. I love that one.
Yeah, look, I've already injected his 5G into my arm, so I don't need to send him Bitcoin anymore.
Speaking of online bazillionaires, we're also joined once again in the Vertical Hold virtual studio by Biteside El Presidente, Seamus Byrne. Seamus, welcome back to the show. What's your favourite bit of fake news that's been doing the rounds?
Look, I'm a little bit with Alex there about recent doing the rounds because you're like, it's a really, really dangerous, horrific place out there. But I can never look past the whole discussion about Sinbad's Shazam movie and the number of people who really do believe that this was a movie that existed in the 90s somehow. And I'm quite keen to actually get him to do a cameo video because he is on Cameo, where he admits to actually having been in a movie called called Shazam, because I think that would just help to really, mess with everybody's brains all over again.
Because I kind of thought I remember seeing that movie, and I was telling this story to a friend of mine, and he's like, yeah, I've seen that movie. And I'm like, no, you probably haven't. You think you have. And he's like, no, I've definitely seen that movie. It's called the Mandela effect, I think, because there's this whole group of society who think they remember news reports about Mandela dying when he never did or something crazy like that.
Spoiler alert, Adam, he has actually now passed away.
But I mean, before. All right, yeah, good point.
Yeah, but you're right. It has an official name and it's a whole weird psychological phenomenon. And yeah, I think people are mostly confused because there was a movie with Shaquille O'Neal playing a genie in the 90s. And people think there's kind of crossed wires in that sort of context. But it is such a good one.
I think you're being generous there, Chambers, describing that as a movie.
a marketing vehicle.
Well, speaking of effects, we're talking today about the Twitter effect and what Twitter's going to try and do to crack down on fake news in Australia and allow Australians to report misinformation, whatever they determine that to be. But before we dive into the murky world of misinformation, Alex, this week Optus is trying to help Aussies better manage subscription overload. What's the story there?
So, Adam, over the years, we've seen telcos do all sorts of things to try and entice customers. Free phones, free consoles, complimentary subscriptions to this, that, or the other. Optus has taken a slightly different approach to this, and they've basically said, look, you've probably got a whole bunch of subscriptions to streaming services, news services, all sorts of fitness apps and other bits and pieces. And keeping track of all of that can be tricky, and it can be really annoying if you think, oh, yeah, I've got to remember to cancel that. And the next time you remember to cancel it is because you've just seen that it's rolled over and got you another $10 for a new month.
Happened to me yesterday. Yeah.
So they're launching a service called Optus SubHub. And while the name suggests that they're going to deliver delicious footlong sandwiches to you, instead it's meant to be kind of a one-stop shop where they control all of your subscriptions, or as many as subscriptions as are on Optus SubHub, in return for which you get a discount. Seamus, is that the kind of thing that might entice you to become a customer of a particular telco?
Look, as a regional Australian, my choice of telco is typically dependent on what reception I can get in the primary area of concern for my life. But I think for the most part, I really do like the idea of this if it works well, because it really is a thing that we have more and more services out there. If there was someone who could genuinely provide a dashboard of some kind where I could, hit some blinky lights and say, yep, at the end of the current sub period, switch that one off and kind of know, okay, yeah, we're going to ride kind of different services and focus and, binge the right things for a given period of time. And then we'll swap over to another service a couple of months later. And making that easy to do, that would be fantastic. And even separate from whether you're getting a discount. So, to then sort of say, hey, you're then going to get a discount. I mean, almost that then leads itself to that idea that people are probably just going to start going, well, if I'm getting a discount, that's kind of adding up to maybe, 1 out of 5 services almost being free. So I'll just leave them all on and forget about it.
Do we know, do they let you do that thing of scheduling to turn it on and off? That'd be great if they did, but I wouldn't think that's what they're offering.
I wouldn't be putting money on it. I'll put it that way. I don't think so. Yeah. I don't think they've said anything like that.
Because a lot of people talk about doing exactly what Seamus said about, all right, I'll pay for Netflix this month, I'll pay for Disney that month, and then I'll jump in, catch up on what I was missing out of. But trying to do it manually is such a hassle that if someone would pay, if you could pay someone a couple of bucks to that, that'd be fantastic. Do you think, Seamus, though, that people want this service from their telco? Because I reckon there's some fintech out there kicking themselves. It's like, but this is the idea we were going to launch next week. We were going to be the unicorn bazillionaires. Would this be better off coming from someone else, or even coming from your bank, or why Optus?
Yeah, see, I think that people have gotten used to a lot of different things being attached to our telco bill, and definitely different players have sort of tried different angles on that over the years to just sort of bundle things up in that sort of a sense. So I do see that fit there where there's a high trust relationship there with our telcos to a certain degree that means, and likewise, it's network related, so all that idea of, well, this is going to come in over some kind of a, bandwidth consuming service, and that's what I get from my telco. I didn't notice on this. Is it mobile, or is this for home broadband users? Like, which is it specific to one or the other, or is Optus just kind of saying this is for any of their customers?
It's not quite any Optus customer.
Yep.
Specifically, it is postpaid mobile or broadband. So if you're on a prepaid Optus deal, you're out. Otherwise, you can be in. On that all-in front, though, because I had to write this up the day we're recording this, I can really only think of one place that already sort of does this, and it's not a telco at all. It's Apple. Because if you subscribe to stuff through an iPhone or through an iPad, it comes through as an Apple subscription, and you can look at all of this stuff in the one spot. Now, there are some players for whom that doesn't make a lot of sense because their subscriptions are sometimes cheaper if you don't go through Apple because of Apple's 30% cut, but they do offer that as a feature.
Is there any advantage of doing it through Apple, though? Like, there's no kind of discount or advanced management fees. I guess the only advantage is it's all coming from your iTunes credit.
So the one thing you can do is you can go to a panel where you see everything you're subscribed to, and you can then just hit a button on that without needing to go to an app. You can tell a subscription to end at the end of the current cycle. And that's kind of the thing, even with the Optus idea, that, as much as they might not give you this perfect, shiny dashboard that's all about sort of making it perfect, I think there's an element there of even just knowing all these subs are controlled in one place, so that I could say, well, yeah, I'm going to end that particular sub, and then whenever that period of time is over, then that one is going to cycle off for a while. The trick would be, do you then need to set up a new subscription of some kind with Optus? Because I've noticed in some notes here that it's pointing out that there's something along the lines of it not being able to attach to your existing account, but you might have to create a new account through this or something.
So at launch, what they've said is they don't have the capability to take over existing accounts.
Yeah.
And reading between the lines, that's almost certainly because for some of those existing accounts, you might have a subscription that runs for a month. You might have bought a year's subscription. You might be sitting on a 3-month free subscription or a bonus offer or something. And there's a lot of complexity there that I guess they don't want to deal with. Whereas if it's a new account, they can just say, right, we are creating a new account under the name of Seamus Byrne, and this is what it will be. That's easier, I guess. But it also comes down to this thing of the services they've got on board, because at launch, they don't have a lot of them.
Here's the big thing, though. Is this tying me to Optus? What happens if I decide I don't want to be an Optus customer anymore? Do I suddenly lose control of my Netflix account and all my other accounts, and I have to close them and go and open new ones again? Because that would suck.
I believe we've established that Eve is going to take over your accounts anyway, Adam.
Yes.
Look, it's definitely a bit of an anchor to Optus. That's their play here, of course. They want to keep you as a customer. Yeah. It's not exactly clear what happens with those subscriptions if you move off Optus. Although for most of the ones that they've got at launch, and at launch, as I said, the pickings are pretty slim. The big star attraction here is Amazon, and specifically Amazon Prime. They're offering a 12-month sub to Amazon Prime, which is worth, well, by their reckoning, about $88. Looking at the 12-month price, it's actually about $60, but hey, that's not to be sniffed at. And that's the full Australian version of Amazon Prime. So that's the shipping, Amazon Prime Video, the smaller music and books catalog thing there. But beyond that, they've basically got Kindle, Calm, and Optus Sport. And they give Optus Sport to everyone who's on Optus, basically. You don't have to fight too hard for that. Yeah. But beyond those bonus offers, most of those things are like month to month anyway. So I think people who might go, no, I've had it with Optus, I'm leaving them because of other factors, you would presume, then they're going to just take the viewpoint of, right, well, I'll do it at the end of that month, or I'll just wear the cost of that extra week if my subscription to that service is important.
But if I've created a new Netflix account through them, can I keep using that Netflix account after I've left Optus? That's my question. Do I then need to go and create a new fresh Netflix account and a new fresh everything else account? Because I want to know the answer to that before I signed up, because if that's the case, forget it. I don't want all those accounts tied to them, then I can't take them somewhere else, which is why I'd much rather do it through a third-party provider who I'm not going to go, well, suddenly I don't want to be with Optus anymore because Telstra's got better coverage in my area, where if it's a third-party provider, there's no reason why I would move from them to somewhere else because they don't work where I live, for example.
And look, I think it's a really good question. I haven't seen anything that very clearly states that you'd almost need to go in, set it up, then log into your Netflix account and check what the billing details are purely in the Netflix app to see if there's some way that you could, say, update billing information, or something where you could kind of steal that control back when you decide you've had enough.
Look, without a doubt, that's exactly what you do, because what Optus is actually doing here is they're basically taking a payment authority. That's what they're actually doing. They're basically saying, we want to be the issuing payment authority, and in return, we will give you a discount. It's 5% off each service if you've got 2, 10% if you've got 3 or more. And at launch, in fact, to have 3 or more, you'd have to have everything they're offering. But they say there are more coming soon. They're going to be a payment authority. You could, and I can't see how they'd stop you, actually. You could log into the regular web interface of Amazon Prime, of Calm, of Kindle Unlimited. Those are the big ones they've got at launch, and see what they had as the payment thing. And you can change those the same way.
billing details.
Exactly. The same way you might
Yeah.
change it if your credit card details needed to change, or if you changed banks or anything like that. And all that would happen then, obviously, is Optus would then bounce off. And obviously, if you didn't tell Optus you were doing this, you might end up having some interesting conversations with your bank or financial institution about being double billed and so on. But I can't see them wresting control from you in that way. And that's really not what they're after here either, because they're more talking that convenience play, and presumably the idea that them cutting 10% or 5% off the cost of these subscriptions is worth more to them in terms of your ongoing Optus subscriptions, mobile, broadband, whatever, than whatever that cost might be. Their profit margin is fat enough to absorb that, or the deals they can cut with your Amazons and the like are more worth it.
And it's like one part of me keeps thinking, I'm concerned about, if I needed to set up a new account on Netflix, that's then it's, losing all that. Netflix is the one place where I feel like there's an algorithm that is vaguely useful to me in terms of it knowing my history of what I want to watch and having profiles for everyone in the family so that you'll actually get recommendations now and then that you go, oh, cool. I'm glad I now know that's in the library because that is something I would like to watch, as opposed to all the other horrible algorithms out there in the world. But then I think about the fact that basically, I don't think there's another streaming service that remotely even bothers trying to do algorithms. It's just, well, you've set up a bit of a watch list, but we don't care what's on your watch list. We're just going to put on the front door what we've decided we're putting on the front door.
See, I think the Netflix algorithm's gotten stupider over the years. I think it's gotten worse. The last time I can think, wow, here's a service that actually gets what I want, and I'm going back a long while here, was TiVo. Then, the whole thumbs up, thumbs down, that worked really well, and that
Rest
got
in peace.
Intelligent stuff to me. Netflix is a bit maybe and also, but hey, here's this shiny new thing, and we don't care if you want it or not. We're going to keep telling you about it till you watch it. Watch it.
Yeah, definitely. The hot tip, of course, to listeners is to go and find those, super genre plugins for the desktop mode of looking at Netflix. So you can actually see like the full list of all of their categories. There's like Chrome plugins that you can get. Very handy when you really are trying to browse for stuff that you wish it would have shown you on the front door at some point. And the more of those you can actually then add onto a playlist, that will then eventually help it. It's just, that front door, if it never showed it to you, you will almost never know it exists.
So every day, Twitter tells me all sorts of things. Some useful, some not so useful, some more to do with whether or not getting kicked in my man area is going to hurt more than childbirth. Seamus, Twitter tries to sell itself as a kind of news source, and this week it's announced a new initiative at dealing with that kind of misinformation. What's actually going on in the land of the fail whale?
So Twitter, the fail whale, it's been so long. And, classic, shout out, Aussie artist, made the original fail whale. And of course, there's probably people listening to this who don't even remember it at all. But yes, Twitter has decided that we get to be one of the guinea pigs on this occasion in a better way than the Twitter Blue subscription service, where you get nothing in particular for giving them money every month. This one is actually the kind of thing some people probably would pay for, which is one of the reporting options has been added in, rather than saying this is abusive or harmful or whatever it might be, is to actually say, I want to report this because it is misinformation related to COVID or health. And by being able to do that, they're trying to emphasize that idea of, we know there's a lot of rubbish out there, but when that wasn't really there on the list, it obviously then wasn't giving their reviewers the right information to say, is this a reason to kick this message off or to, put this account in the sin bin or whatever it might be. So Australia, Korea, and what's the third country?
The US?
It's the US.
Oh, and the US. Okay, sorry. I kept thinking somehow that they weren't going to be included in the initial rollout, hide them from all the scary stuff. But no, that's great. So the US, Korea, and Australia are, kicking off this little misinformation flagging system.
And how is it different from what they've done in the past?
Yeah, so it really is that in the, if you go into a tweet, in the options that are available there, you can choose to report a specific
So
tweet.
it's just one more option available in the feature that was already there. It's not a new feature from scratch.
Yeah, it's adding the category of reporting so that they then can very quickly respond to, is this or isn't this kind of a problem, as opposed to before when, it was just more generically saying this thing
Yeah.
is inappropriate.
Well, if it's that simple, why didn't they do it years ago? I assumed they'd done something big, like a
Well,
major
there's
change.
there is a bigger twist here, though, because Seamus, as you said, this is a trial, and Twitter has not actually explicitly said, "Oh, Adam, when you see some misinformation and report it, we will act on it." What they've actually said is, in essence, we are the lab mice in their trial. They actually want to see how people report misinformation, not
Ah,
what the misinformation is or how
yeah.
they might respond or deal with it. They're just data gathering at this point to say, hey, what are the things that people pick up on? How do they pick up on? Do we get lots and lots and lots of reports about, why you shouldn't inject royal jelly directly into your veins or whatever? Or do we only get the one and therefore we can ignore it because that person's a crank? They're just data
Or
gathering at the moment.
do people abuse it and report people who are doing the right thing because they want to take them out?
Well, this is the other problem.
Yeah,
Seamus, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely is abuse going to happen on Twitter?
11.
I was going to say, I believe based on misinformation type qualities, it's at least a 13, because, that's a number that exists on a scale when it comes to this kind of thing. So, yeah. I mean, this is the issue that they've always had is it's almost easier to say, is this abusive? Yes, no. Whereas misinformation, they are always tiptoeing around the political issues and the idea that, facts have a left leaning bias these days. So it's that idea that they need to, as you say, get the information. Are they going to do much with it? I'm not sure. I feel like there are probably people who've gone through the Sky News archives for a little while, today, and flagging as misinformation anything that's flagging news items. That's going to be one of their kinds of issues. Is, are we just talking about things from normal kinds of people's accounts? Are we talking about links to news items where the news item is misinformation, even if it's from some kind of partner organization that is considered to be a big media company? How are we going to verify, fact check those kinds of issues? And it's also interesting that they're not touching climate discussions with this one. They have very specifically said this is about COVID misinformation and health misinformation.
So one dumpster fire at a time.
There are only so many dumpsters that they can monitor at once, apparently.
But I mean, their track record with this stuff, it's not good. It's not good in any real way. And I mean, I hate to invoke his name, but the most recent but one US president, for example, I mean, it took them such a ridiculously long time to remove him. And as a fountain, a positive torrent of misinformation out there. And this was not something that I think was open to a great deal of interpretation. They're not good at dealing with this stuff. And I would argue for Twitter, and this isn't entirely me devil's advocating either, I would argue for Twitter, they sort of actively don't want to deal with some of this. And maybe that's why COVID is the thing that they're honing in on. They don't want to deal with some of this because, of course, a bit of misinformation leads to a big, healthy online brawl argument, which leads to more Twitter engagement.
And for some reason, they have been happy to run a system that is essentially, is Jack upset by this one? Is Jack upset? Do we kick this person off? How many days, Jack? Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay, yeah, okay. 7 days. Okay, we'll do 7 days this time. How many more chances? One more chance? Okay, thanks, Jack. It is just such an executive decision right now compared to anything that has. And look, it's always, these are issues, they're fuzzy issues sometimes, right? Where it's like the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law. But any system that is trying to ultimately run because, the CEO of a company decided it was time to do something about it, and not because they've set some kind of rules that are easily managed, no matter how many people or who is causing the problems. It's just a mess. And I do think, if Twitter made the kind of money that Square makes for Jack Dorsey, then they probably would care a lot more about this. But it is sort of the, it's the the
Side hustle.
Yeah, it is. That's his side hustle these days. That's the perfect way to put it. And its percentage growth is so much less because they're still trying to work out what to do with it. And they iterate very slowly at Twitter these days. So it's, tricky. And as much as I'm a big user of the platform, I'm lucky to just be, a middlingly okay white person of male, persuasion who doesn't actually have to deal with the heights of the abuse that get thrown around on that platform with very little done about it.
They actually released some stats around their COVID stuff, which I found really interesting. That globally, from the start of the pandemic, Twitter says it's challenged 11.7 million accounts. That sounds great for COVID-19 content. But it's only suspended 1,711 and removed 49,612 pieces of content. And I'm going to argue, and I'm making the figures up in my head, I'll be honest, I'm going to argue there's probably 49,000 pieces of content being posted to Twitter every minute, if not every second. It's not a great strike rate, is it?
Yeah, that's bad, and again, right, it's one thing that I guess it shouldn't matter how many followers an account has. Like, they can keyword this stuff, they can, there's and of course so much of it is just sprayed out on, by bots. It's like, it's fascinating to say literally tens of thousands of accounts is all has been shut off through this kind of that's weird. That feels like a very low number. Like, they shouldn't take that as a pride point to say we've only suspended this many accounts. You think, is that all? Is that really
and this
all?
This is a figure they made public. I mean, this is the figure where they said, hey, this is what we've done. And I suppose that's better than just saying, oh, well, we can't say what we've done because it's commercial in confidence or something. But it's still, you're still making yourselves look pretty awful here. Well, that static sound can only mean that the popcorn is ready and that it's time to wrap up another episode of Vertical Hold. Thanks to Seamus for joining us for this week's show.
Very pleased to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And now, Seamus, you've been here before. It's time for you to face the Vertical Hold 3 questions of doom. I'll ask you all 3, and then you can answer all 3 in sequence. Where can people find your work online? Where can they find your social media online? And the big contentious question, it's deadline time. You're a tech journalist. What's the go-to takeaway food you reach for?
So biteside.com is the place to go, where you can get all the latest stories and a newsletter and all those nice things. You can follow me on Twitter, mostly at Seamus, or Biteside at Biteside. And my takeaway food of choice on Deadline, probably Thai food of some kind. Usually like a good musman curry, though if it has to be eaten out of my hand because I'm sitting at my desk chasing that deadline, then, that's probably, God, I'm still probably going to make a mess because it's probably a kebab. Because you think it's going to stay in your hand.
Oh,
it's just going to land all over your desk.
And then next thing you know, the grease is pouring out the other end onto the keyboard. And
that's when you remember you wore the white shirt that day.
Yes.
And that Apple probably won't want this loan a MacBook back.
As always, you can catch us online at Vertical Hold AU on Twitter, via the Vertical Hold Facebook page, or on the web at verticalhold.com.au.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Hang in there. We're on a big push to reach new people this year. So if you know someone who you think might enjoy the show, send them a message, drop them a line, let them know, and help us make the show bigger and better in 2021. Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Aussie Broadband, changing the game with their award-winning network and Australian-based support. Speaking of online bazillionaires, we're joined once again in the Vertical Hold studios by Bytes Air.
You
by
did it again.
bites. By bites.
It was vertical
Because I
Hole
was trying to say
Studios.
Bite-Side and Seamus at the same time. That's what it was.
It's
It
not
was like
that hard.
thinking about the next hurdle, and he tripped over the hurdle in
tripped over
front.
the hurdle in front of me.